Hey everyone, and welcome to the Urban Kingdom podcast. Today's guest is Manny Mercado. We talk about a number of interesting things. We talk about finances, we hear his life story, and then we talk about some do's and don'ts for ministry and so much more. You can tune into that, but first I want to talk about the Urban Educators Collective. This past summer, a number of urban administrators from different schools got together and decided to meet and discuss what it could mean if we would actually collectively work together. And so now what you're seeing is a powerhouse of ministries that are all working together for the purpose of the kingdom. We throw several events a year, and I can go on and on about what we do, but what you should know is that this podcast is brought to you by the Urban Educators Collective. So every episode you see from this point on is provided to you by the Urban Educators Collective. If you want to find out more about us, go to uecollective.org, and you can see what we're up to. Thank you for watching, and I can't wait for you to see the episode. Okay, Manny, thanks for coming on the episode today. We appreciate you coming. I'm going to quickly introduce the audience to you, and then we will go from there. And hopefully I gave you a good intro. I gave it to you ahead of time, but my intros are lackluster, to say the least. Emmanuel, otherwise known as Manny Mercado, is a father and youth pastor residing in Reading, Pennsylvania. He's a financial counselor, real estate investor, and owner of Kingdom Foundations Realty. Manny attended and graduated from Fairview Christian School, which, by the way, is one of the schools in the Urban Educators Collective, which we'll talk about more later, and has since started a family, poured into his local community, and is a youth pastor at Shiloh Mennonite Church. Manny and I have worked together for several years on the Urban Youth Workers Retreat Board, which you'll also hear more about later in this episode. Once again, Manny, thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Hey, it's good to be here. Appreciate you opening your doors so that I could be here today. And yeah, I'm excited to share, so thank you for having me over. You gave me the opportunity to come here and be your voice. And God has been so good, so I am excited to be here.
Good. One thing you said is that to give a voice, and I really appreciate that, because we almost named this podcast the Urban Platform Podcast, but the initials don't sound very good, so we went with UKP instead. But our goal is to platform people and their stories first, and then their ideas, and then the struggles, and then all these things, and those things will come out today. But nothing's more powerful than a story. And so we're going to actually start with your story. I have a few questions here to give you some reference into what I'm looking for, but I'm going to let you go, and then I might jump in here and there to ask you questions or add a story here and there. But we'll go as long as you want here with the story portion. I asked Manny to share his life story. I heard this story probably about let's say 2-3 years ago, maybe 4. You shared your story at Urban Youth Workers Retreat, and I was really, really connecting with it because, I came up in a similar way into churches and kids clubs and meeting with families that invested in me, had good relationships with, and so I'm interested to see what parallels there'll be. A couple questions that I had to guide maybe the conversation. One, I want to highlight the city of Reading. You're always teasing me about York being a rundown, crime-ridden city. I disagree. I think Reading is way worse. I interned in Reading for 6 weeks when I was in college. You can hardly drive down the street because the streets are so narrow and one car can fit, which is dumb because they're 2 ways. But anyway, we're going to speak positively of Reading today for the only time ever. I want you to describe the city of Reading, growing up in it, your family and ethnic culture, any stories from that, and then going further from that, talking about Anabaptism. When did you meet Anabaptists? What were your first impressions? What are your impressions today? Who made significant impacts on your life, and how? And yeah, just so on and so forth. And I'll give it over to you.
Yeah, sure thing. So to begin with, I was born in PR, Puerto Rico. Para toda mi gente de Puerto Rico, vamos pa'lante.
Sí.
Yeah, my man Keisha, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias, my man. So, yeah, I came to Reading when I was 7, and the nature of it was that we came to Reading for that American dream of just making it. I grew up in a family where my dad drank, and he was very abusive verbally, very abusive physically, and yeah, it was a danger to us. And so it was one of the reasons why we came over here. But ironically enough, my dad then followed my mom because, it was one of those relationships where it was on and off, and yeah, it was just really annoying for us growing up. But anyways, that's what brought us to Reading, and came to Reading when I was 7, and I'm 33 now, so it's been a hot minute since I've been in Reading. And growing up, I remember coming and going to school and not knowing English, and trying to communicate something without knowing the language was just hard.
Wow.
And so I just remember trying to communicate this idea and just showing things here and there, and it was very difficult, but this was what we felt was best for our family. And so, yeah, growing up in the city of Reading, one of the things that I remember was, just having a lot of friends around, my homies. I always call them my homies, and we did a lot of bike riding, and we would get into a lot of trouble, obviously. But this was the guys that I connected with. Everybody has a sense of belonging, and that was my sense of belonging. And the city itself, growing up, I didn't really have a lot of ties with knowing what's going on. But right off the get-go, I can remember many stories that would have pointed to Reading not being a safe city. And, growing up, we didn't really think about that a whole lot. But thinking about our culture in an early age, between the ages of 10 and 14, we did get into a lot of trouble. We did get into fights. I remember one time there was a fight that my friend got into, and then we all kind of got into a fight, and then like additional people came out of nowhere, and so everybody booked it. We're all running, and then we went to my friend's house, and my one friend happened to have a new bike, and so the bike was sitting out front. We're all chilling out there like we're hard, and then this minivan pulls up with this other gang, or these other people that we got into a fight with, and the guys came out, and right away we all just stood shut because we saw this guy had a gun sticking right from his side pocket like that, and we're all kind of like, nobody's talking now.
Yeah.
And so he's like, hey, who owns this bike? And then we're all like, nobody said anything, right? And then he picked up this bike, took it right off, like $150 bike. For a 12-year-old, that's a lot of money. And so that was one of many instances where we got into trouble. But yeah, growing up, kind of came from that upbringings where we just did a lot of things that we shouldn't have, didn't have the right influence. A lot of it stems back to a fatherless home, which is a very common issue in a lot of urban settings. And yeah, Reading is one of those that you really see the effects of that. The Reading School District is one of the worst school districts in PA. And just like you were saying, knocking on Reading, but yeah, the reality is that there is a lot of brokenness there. But when I was about 11 years old, I was hanging out at my friend's house. So remember Eduardo, and we're just chilling there, and somebody knocks at the door. So my friend goes, he comes back to me. He's like, hey man, do you want to go to church? I was like, huh? All right, that was out of the blue, man. We're just here hanging out. We're playing PlayStation, and now this. And so I was like, yeah, I guess. He was going, and I don't know if there was any other friends that I remember going, but I knew he was going to be there. So there's going to be somebody that I at least knew. He said it was fun, which is kind of a lie in the beginning. But the very popular thing, a good hook, is that snack.
Yeah.
Can't go wrong with that snack. When they tell you there's food at the end, it sweetens the deal up. So I was like, all right, let's go. And so I would have got invited to Shalom Mennonite Church, which is the current church that I'm a pastor at now. But I just remember going there, and it was the first time I saw pilgrims.
Yeah.
Or what I thought was pilgrims, right? Went there and saw these people that are very different from what I was accustomed to. And my only accustomization to church would have been the Catholic Church. Okay. So in PR, we would have grown up going to church on Sunday, but that was about it. As very popularly known, there's not relationship there. You know, with that Catholic, you know, traditional things that are being done, but your life does not change during the week. And so that was my thought of church. It was something that you did to pay respects, but that's about it.
So you believe that God existed, but the concept of a relationship with God or a full-blown devotion for your whole life was a foreign idea. You didn't really think about it that way.
Yeah, yep, that's exactly right. It was this whole idea of, I think there's a God out there somewhere, but he's not a personal God.
Yeah.
Something that I could be connected with. And so thinking about that, that was my connection to the Mennonite group. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was that there was a genuine care and a love for me. You know, sometimes you look at a group and the group can seem like people are numbers.
Yeah.
You know, people are you're just this person. Like, so that extra attention that was given was something that really stuck out to me. More so, attention from an older male figure, because I didn't really have that in my life. And so I was really blessed to have a group of guys, not just one person, but a group of guys really dedicate their lives to getting to know me, getting to know my interests, right? My personality, the things that I enjoy, and building on that. I remember I used to skateboard, okay? I did a ton of stuff, but skateboarding was one of them. And a good friend of mine, Arlen, I remember that, you know, in order for him to connect with me, he knew one of the things that we were into was skateboarding. And so one time he invited me and my one friend to go to a skate park and just go out there and chill. And, you know, I remember Arlen trying to skateboard, and he was trash. You know, he's still trash.
Yeah.
But, you know, I love Arlen. He's one of my main guys, and as I was just talking to him on the way here. But that was one of many examples of somebody showing interest to me. You see, if we want to change lives, it begins with a relationship.
Right.
I often think of, you know, we see a lot of street preachers on the corner, and they're preaching the gospel. It's all truth. But to me, I see too many people that they just walk by, and they're hearing truth. You know, there is power to that. But I always think, like, would a person be having a more receiving heart when they hear, you know, something being preached and they don't know who they are? Are they even normal, or are they crazy? Versus somebody who has equitable interest in your life. You know, they have a relationship established, and you know him well enough to say, you know what, this guy's really not that crazy. And so whatever he has to say, there is meaning to it. It has substance to it. And so, you know, that was one of the things that I noticed in my life, that the guys that I look up to are guys that invested into me. And so I think that's really that was a powerful testimony for me. And I would say I could easily think of 6 guys that really poured into my life. And I'm going to give him a shout out. Arlen, I just mentioned him. We have Lance. I got Dave. Got Wendell. I have Steve. You know, even Dale. I don't know if they're going to be listening to these podcasts, but it's a shout out to these guys. A group of guys that came together. And, you know, we might get into this a little later. I don't know how this is going to go out, but the reality is that Kids Club isn't going to cut it.
Today's episode is sponsored by Urban Workers Retreat. Urban Workers Retreat, formerly known as Urban Youth Workers Retreat, is a weekend designed to encourage, awaken, and equip all those who attend or tune in. Held in mid-April, we assemble a network of hundreds of both experienced, new, and interested missionaries to brainstorm, reflect, and build with one another. UWR is a proud sponsor of the Urban Kingdom podcast, and it's happening this year, April 14th to 16th at Roxbury Holiness Camp, Orrstown, PA. Our keynotes are Daniel and June Pollard, who will be sharing stories and insights from their decades of experience discipling others both internationally and stateside. Hear also from 5 experienced workshop speakers and 10 additional missionaries share about their unique and out-of-the-box thinking methods to reach their communities. Register today at urbanworkersretreat.com. urbanworkersretreat.com.
My upbringings, there was definitely some things that I was dealing with some trauma because of the absence of my dad. My mom had to pick up the slack and just do a whole lot. A lot of stress created in our family. We were in desperate need of God. And the Lord is so good.
Mm-hmm.
And he works
Amen.
things out.
So in what ways would you say people invested in you when you were younger? Like you mentioned a number of names. Do you have any stories or examples in ways that you were invested in?
Yeah, definitely. So Lance would have been another really close friend of mine. And what's really interesting is like Lance and I, we're like polar opposites, just like some of these other guys. Like I was cute. I'm still cute. He isn't cute. He's never been cute. I hope he's not listening. But no, Lance was he was that guy that was really into sports, which was great. I love sports, but one of the things that they really did as a family was play board games. When I say play board games, this is like taking a regular board game and putting it on steroids. And you know, this is like a minimum of a 3-hour board game that you were committing to playing.
So one of those families, huh?
One of those families. And so that's not me at all. I'm like, let's go out there. Let's take these guys' car and whip them around. I was 14, so we weren't supposed to be driving. But you know, when these people live in the country, they leave their keys inside their cars. That's a plus for us people from the city.
Yeah.
So it's a little hack there.
My mom just got her car stolen. My adoptive mom just got her car stolen the other day. So, and she did it by leaving a set of spare keys in the car. But growing up, the Shank family, they didn't actually take their keys out of the car. So for the first 10, 15, maybe even 20 years of their family existing in York, the keys were always in the car, and often in a way that you could see it or find it very easily if you went in. And they had their cars stolen a number of different times. And the police, I don't know if the police take it seriously when a Mennonite calls them and tells them their car got stolen or not, but they have a reputation for sure.
That's so funny. So yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so we'll be like, yeah, you guys go play your board games, and then me and my other friend go out and do stuff like that. And anyways, so what I want to highlight from that relationship was not the fact that I went to the house and I didn't necessarily want to play their 3-hour board game, but I got to come to a place where the doors were open and where family was exposed. Now, I'm not saying they had the best family, right? I'm not saying they had the best image of a great working family, great children, and great parent situation, but just the fact of seeing a family unit being together, welcoming others. I think one of the things that a lot of people need around us is community and that family, and there's a need for that. And just the whole thought of just a family coming together to eat supper at the table as a family was weird to me. Like, I never experienced that. We always ate whenever we felt like it. It wasn't on a schedule or anything like that. And so just seeing some of the family aspects, just having a safe place to go was huge, right? But then again, we got into some great conversations. Like, you know, Lance and I, his brothers, like, we would just talk about life. How often does somebody talk to you about life? Hey, how are you doing? Like, yeah, this is hard. And somebody that you can trust.
It's true. Most of our conversations on life are very shallow and surface level. Yeah.
And so we had a lot of great conversations, after Bible study on Thursdays, that we would stay there easily an hour afterwards. I remember those times. We did that very frequently. Bible study's over, but that's really when the relationships really began.
Yeah.
That's really where the magic happened. And just looking back, man, I remember we always had a time of prayer, and then there was like 4 or 5 of us that would be there, and we just talked. And yeah, those were foundational pieces to where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. So, Manny, one of the things that you said that I really, really liked, and let's just go into the Kids Club discussion now. We may even attack that in different ways later. And I say attack, we are going to sound like we're attacking it because we both have strong opinions about this. But I also think that we're both qualified to speak boldly about this because we've been involved on both ends of the situation. We've been involved in helping in them, and we've both been a kid in a kids club. And so one of the things that I have often spoken about, written about, or whatever, is hard ministry versus easy ministry. Hard ministry are things like discipleship groups, one-on-one mentoring, group mentoring, bringing people into your homes for meals on a consistent basis, letting them be around your children, finding a family that has children and having their children hang out with your children so that your children aren't growing up in some kind of echo chamber or whatever, while also allowing mutually beneficial relationships to happen, so on and so forth. Easy ministry are things like kids clubs. And one of the things that, especially about kids clubs, that I've struggled with to endorse or support is the idea that at the very basis of these programs, the idea is we're going to get whoever we can find from our churches, Mennonite churches, wherever, and give them a program or system to, in a more easily and efficient way, do some kind of ministry. And in my experience, whenever a organization, a church, or anyone creates easy ministry for somebody, good ministry is not happening. And I'm not equipped to define what good ministry is here today, but I think I know from experience and from going around and speaking and sharing different places when it's not good ministry. What are some of the things about kids clubs that you think make it inadequate to be, or not inadequate, because I think there can be value in them, but why is it not that next level? Why is it not producing very many, if at all, committed Christians that can then continue to invest in other people in their neighborhoods? And why are we not seeing that?
That's a great question. And I continue to grow in my understanding of it, right, as time has gone on. And like you're saying, being a product of the program. And what I want to say is that I believe that the idea of the program of kids clubs, or I'd love to hope, right, is that it started with a good intention of we want to share the gospel. We want these kids to know Christ. We want them to know the stories. We want them to get familiarized with it. And I want to hope that, right? But the reality is that when you have a program, which is what it is, a program is something that I don't know how to explain it without saying program, right? A program is a meeting or an event on a specific time, on a weekly basis, and a yearly basis, whatever, however you want to do that. But the thing about a program is that then you have to get volunteers to join this program. And so the whole idea of, or desire to want children to see Christ, it's a great idea. Where I think what makes this interesting is that when you have a program, you need volunteers. When you have volunteers, you don't necessarily have people that are passionate about the
or
calling.
qualified.
Yeah, or qualified. Yeah, you're right. And yeah, qualification is a big one. Sometimes we assume that everybody could teach, or that could communicate well, but that's another subject. But again, the thing with that whole program mindset is that sometimes there's high turnover, right? There's people that feel like, oh, this sounds like a cool thing. I'm gonna go do this for a year or two, and then they feel good about themselves, which is okay. It's not a bad thing. You're going and you're teaching Bible stories, but I think sometimes we kind of forget what we're supposed to be doing, right? Like God, when He left, He went up to heaven and He ascended. He gave us the mission. And He said to make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. And so sometimes we lose focus of that. So in what we're doing, are we doing that? And one of the reasons that I believe that kids clubs is, how should I say this? Kids club is a great starting point. Let's put it that way. It's a great way to meet other children that do not believe what you believe, and to build those relationships from that. I believe that it's a starting point. It's almost like a step 1 of 5. And I think it's a good springboard to building relationship. Yeah. But it's not the end result. Okay? So a lot of times through our kids club at our church, that's how I met a lot of these great mentors in my life. It started from there, but it didn't end there. And so that created a space for relationships to be built, but they had to initiate that. They had to make it happen. Yeah. And like you were saying, that's when it starts going to a what were the 2 words you called it? You say easy ministry or
hard ministry.
Hard ministry. Yeah. Then it becomes hard because, like you're saying, to invite someone to your house who might be a little crazy, who might steal from you, right?
Like Manny.
Yeah. Well, ex-Manny.
Yeah, sure. Sure, younger Manny.
Yeah. Like that takes something, or to give up your time. It's a sacrifice.
Yeah.
Who's willing to do that?
Yeah.
But those are the times that meant most for me. When I saw that, I remember one of the guys that I mentioned, Dave. Okay, and Dave, there was this one Christmas time where I forget what the scenario was. I wasn't having Christmas at my house. I felt kind of lonely. I somehow hooked up with Dave, and Dave said, "Hey, we're having our family Christmas, and you can come over." And so, he invited me over, and this is a family Christmas. Would invited me to his house for Christmas, and at Christmas I didn't have anything to do. I felt kind of lonely, and he opened his doors to his house, and the family welcomed me just like any other children. And then you know how they do, you hand out gifts and all that.
Yeah.
And in my mind I'm thinking like I shouldn't be getting a gift. Like they didn't even know I was coming till today. But here, I think they just got somebody else's gift and they gave it to me, which is kind of neat. And I opened it, and it was like an extra large shirt, but it was the thought that count.
Yeah.
And I remember that shirt was funny, or not funny. It was kind of cool because it was like a waterproof shirt. You could spill a drink on it and you're good to go, which I will always spill a lot of stuff on me. But anyways, I still remember that. Dave opened his doors to a time of family, to a time of building on that. And that is something that I still think about. And I want to do the same. And so the whole thing with Kids Club, like I said, is it's a great springboard to the Great Commission. And it's not the end to the mission call, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. So it's interesting you said that it's a great starting point, a great springboard. I think it's both a springboard for the students, or whatever you want to call them, that are in the program, and the whatever you call them, missionaries that are in it as well, because it was both a springboard for both you and I, but it was also is often a springboard when I think of the most respected missionaries that I know, or mission-minded people in my life that are either overseas or doing great work in cities, whatever. Some of those people will be hosting the podcast in the future. Almost all of them started with a kids club, right? Interestingly enough, they almost all have the same perspective on kids clubs, and they share what we share, right? Because they've heard from people, they've seen, they observed, this is really not cutting it. And when we say not cutting it, we're specifically talking about we don't want people to be obsessed with results, because that's actually what creates the problem, is the idea that we can create a system or program that disciples people for us, right? That creates this easy work. no matter what, no matter how you do it, no matter where you go, ministry will always be taxing. It will always take a lot from you. It will always be sacrificial, and it'll be very thankless often. But one of the things I wanted to pull out is that it's almost always better when it is done in collaboration with the community around you. And so I'm doing a whole episode on kids clubs where I'm sharing independently, and we'll unpack that more at that point. But I really appreciate you bringing out that aspect. I think it's really good.
Yeah. One of the things that I'm thinking with the whole idea of kids club is, and I think a big part of it is, like, we're talking about getting the right pieces for it. Like, one of the things that I think about with the whole mentality, I believe that whoever came up with the idea of kids club, obviously there's people in different places that come up. Those are the people that usually have a passion for it. There's a passion in the heart to reach, you know what I'm saying? And I think that, like you're saying here, it's easier to put a program in place that you can, just do this thing and it's gonna create the results. But the reality is that, we want to find those people that are passionate about it. And this is where I was saying we have to be careful that when we create programs, we always create this program and we have this systematic program that we want to do 10 programs this year. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a beauty in going into the culture and identifying what the needs are before you're coming with this specific program.
Right.
And so I just think that, so many times we go into a place thinking we're going to implement this, we're going to do all this stuff, but yet they're never heard.
Right.
And we're not really speaking their language. And so I think it's powerful that, these people that are mission-minded, which I believe everybody should be mission-minded, right? But if you're called to a certain, town or city, there's a value in going in there and listening to people. What actually speaks to you?
Yeah.
And how can we tie that? How can we do something that speaks to you and then bring Christ into it? Because Christ is ties in with everything in life. And so I just think that would be something that would be powerful if we want to reach the kids, the community, the parents, and it should be a part of everything that mission should be a part of our everyday living. And when kids know that you drive 45 minutes once a week to minister to them, from 7 to 8:30, and then they say deuces.
Yeah.
That speaks differently than somebody, being locally available and investing where they're saying, this area needs Christ. And so I there's just, people can tell.
For sure.
And that's one of the things that I've been learning a lot this year is that, we have this mentality that I'm going to go out here, I'm going to go out there because I'm doing my outreach. Or, many times you might hear of people, once they graduate, they'll go and do missions for 2 years, then come back, and then get married, then have 12 kids, and then I don't know what's after that. We're at the kid stage.
Yeah, become a pastor or lead a youth group or do this. It's not. You can tell a lot when someone's life is guided by a mission mindset. Their entire life, their entire being, they're motivated by Christ. And when somebody is treating it like almost like like it's like in in Korea or other countries, they require you do military service like 4 years. Maybe it's only 2 years. It's almost like that, where families are raising children that they admire these families because they're mission-minded families, but is it actually motivated by love, by obedience to Christ, or is it a concept that we just do because it's what we're supposed to do? Are we motivated to do it because it's what the thing to do is? I'm not at all saying that somebody who comes home and raises a family in their church and doesn't stay in a city is shallow. That's not what I'm saying. And that's everybody. I mean, I tell people often, you know, you can live where you want to live. That's not the problem. What does, I think, matter, and this is true from Scripture or from the character of Christ, or even just people who have been able to effectively reach and help and love people, it is so true that we need to make sure that we are living, like you said, a mission-minded life. Our entire life is consumed by this. One of the people that I think I observed this in the most was Clayton Shank. He was a father figure in my life, passed away a few years ago on Christmas Day. And I would watch him no matter what environment he was in. He was teaching the same way, right? Clayton didn't adjust or change very much at all what he had to say based on where he didn't code switch very much. Now, he code switched sometimes, but I walked around. I mean, I went everywhere with this guy, right? I mean, he was a father figure for me. I moved in with him when I was 16, lived there for, I think it was 6 years. And he sort of adopted me into his family. And he would go preach at a Near Eastern church, which if you know anything about Anabaptists, I mean, it was just about that to that degree. And he would speak with as much passion and as much, he had the mindset that if you don't like what I'm saying, you'll kick me out. And he had moments where that almost happened, a few times, and then I'd see him in the city, and I did not see an uptick in demeaning posture, demeaning words, not intentionally anyway. He had moments where he had to repent or change or adjust, but if you're doing ministry for as many decades as he did it, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to come across the wrong way.
Right.
I think it's so telling. And the thing is, I can tell at 25, but so can a 9-year-old when you're demeaning them by the way you're talking to them, right? And so when I see people get into their mission voice or their teacher voice or whatever at a kids club, and I'm observing, which I've done quite a bit, people stop asking me to do it once they realize I was coming in to tell them that they need to stop doing what they're doing. And, there are solutions. If you're listening at home, there are solutions that go deeper. I will unpack that in another episode, of course, but this is not to say that kids clubs shouldn't happen. It's just to say that we need to temper our expectations and not teach that it's by how often it happens and by how prevalent it is, you'd think it was the ultimate way of ministry. But the fact of the matter is it's not. It just simply isn't. Every episode we will highlight an urban school in our collective. Today's episode highlights Arrows Christian Academy in Reading. They're hoping to open up next year, and you can see more about them at arrowschristianacademy.org. Manny and I's discussion will continue in future weeks. We talk about finances, we continue our discussion on ministry, and there are many other interesting things that we cover still to come. Thanks for tuning in, and see you in a couple weeks.